Thank you very much for this too kind introduction. Unfortunately, I had to leave already 10 minutes ago, so I will be extremely brief and not tell you all what I had in mind that I'm going to tell you. Anyhow, my friend Yves Le Terme already gave a lot of insight about how we managed the crisis back then in 2008. I only could add as one element, he had the advantage, he had only to win the confidence of Belgium, or of his Belgian bank account holders, not to withdraw their money. My challenge was a different one, as the Austrian banks were so much exposed to Central and Eastern Europe, and having banks in Bulgaria, Romania, Serbia, Croatia, Slovakia, Hungary, wherever. The problem was that in those countries, people were in those countries, people were completely concerned about the financial crisis, and they wanted to withdraw their money from their bank accounts. And of course, it's quite an exercise to tell them not to do it. So we closed the banks, but you cannot do that forever. And so the governor of the Austrian Central Bank approached me on a Saturday afternoon when I was in the office and said, we have a problem. I said, what is the problem? He said, well, we now have closed the banks in all those countries for 2 days, but on Monday we have to open them. And I said, well, then open them. And he said, well, but then they will come and ask their money. I said, well, then give them their money. And he said, well, but we do not have the necessary amount of valuta available. I said, well, but then send it there. He said, well, the problem is that we have run out of sheets of 500 euros. I said, well, then order these fucking sheets, you know. Excuse my French, you know. And he said, well, that's a great idea, but these 500 euro sheets, they are printed in Frankfurt. And in order to get an extra ratio of that, it takes 2 weeks. So all our banks will be already killed, including the managers there in Sofia and in Bucharest, etc. I said, well, if we do not have this 500 anymore, send them 200, 100. He said, yes, this we can do. But for this purpose, I need 3 airplanes. And I have to fill up these 3 airplanes only with valuta of 100 and 200 euro. I said, wonderful, then do it. I mean, there is Austrian Airlines and there is cargo, go ahead. He said, well, but the problem is if there happens something. I said, what do you mean? Well, if one of these plane crashes. I said, okay, now we talk. He said, I think we need a decision of the government that we are allowed to do that, to transport that money to these countries. I said, okay. And do you think it's a very good idea that I call an extraordinary meeting of the government on Sunday morning in order to decide that 100 and 200 euro sheets are transported in airplanes from Austria to the different places in Central and Eastern Europe? Said, I mean, you can then have, in addition, not only a bank run in those countries, but also here in Vienna and in Graz and in Linz. So, I mean, okay, if we want to put the entire thing to hell, we can do it. Yeah? But maybe it's not the smartest thing to do. He said, well, but maybe it's enough if you and the finance minister could take the responsibility for this activity. And at that time, there was electoral campaign in Austria. I was not running anymore. But the finance minister was the top runner of my coalition partner, and he was somewhere in the province, you know, campaigning for the elections. So I called him and said, listen, what we have to do now? And he said, well, but I have thousands of people waiting for me. I cannot come to Vienna. And I said, listen, stay calm. I send you my driver with the document that goes to the place where you are going together with me signing this decision of the government that we two, as the federal chancellor and the finance minister, sign, so that the planes can be sent tonight to all these places in Central and Eastern Europe, and we can give people their money. He said, okay, very, very kind, thank you very much. So I thought, okay, we have solved this question. Next thing, next problem, liquidity. Our friend Trichet was very fond when he came to the European Council and reported that he has organized some dollar liquidity with the Federal Reserve Bank. And I said, Jean-Claude, that's great, but this doesn't help me. I need Swiss franc liquidity. He said, why do you need Swiss franc liquidity? I said, well, you know, there has been the habit, I learned, that people in Budapest mainly, but not only there, were taking the loans in order to buy their apartments and their houses in Swiss francs, because Swiss francs were rather cheap, and in addition, you were not paying de facto any interest rate for that. So they all financed their houses in Swiss francs. But now, of course, the Swiss franc is going skyrocketing, you know, and they have to pay back all their loans, and they are not able to fulfill the quota, so we need some liquidity for them. Otherwise, they all will be kicked out of their houses or whatsoever. So he said, very interesting practices down there in the east of our continent. I said, yeah, this is, you know, people who want to optimize their financing as they are taught by managers, politicians, and others. They did this way of de facto zero-cost financing, and now they're in a deep mess. So, okay, Jean-Claude Trichet organized also some Swiss liquidity, and then I said, and there is another story where we are different from the rest of Europe. You excluded for the guarantees of the European Central Bank all the loans on real estate. And I said, then all your guarantees do not help me anymore, because most of the loans that the Austrians take from their banks are in order to finance their houses and their apartments. And these are the safest loans that you can find, because they're all guaranteed by the real estate there. So I need that you enlarge the scope of guarantees also to this type of loans. And he said, well, and is this the entire agenda, or if I have solved this problem, you're coming with other issues? I said, well, no, the other issues you will then hear from Nicolas and from Angela, and they were already mentioned by Yves before. I could tell you a lot of stories about those days, crazy days, but some of the lessons I learned. And one thing is caution is important. And with all the nice stories that people tell you, there always has to be some sort of insurance against unpredictable risks. Therefore, I gave you the background of the liquidity crisis we had with the banks in Central and Eastern Europe. When I heard that we are abolishing in Europe now the 500 euro sheets, because this is improving our position in the fight against organized crimes and money laundering, all bullshit, by the way, because nobody up to date could tell me that in the dollar area, where the largest note is $100, there is less money laundering and less organized crime. Nobody could prove that. But okay, in Europe we took the decision to abolish the 500 euro notes. If we face another crisis like the one I just described, and never say never again, we will face the same troubles that Yves and I already described. So I do not know if it is such a good idea to completely annul cash money, by the way, because as we see in some societies that have already very much developed into a situation where people only use electronic money, you are also excluding part of the society from the economic cycle. I mean, look to all the refugees and all the other people that are coming into our country that do not get bank accounts. And if you do not have a bank account, your electronic maneuverability in this modern economy is very, very limited. But with cash money, people could maneuver. Yeah? So a point of caution, do not throw everything away from the beginning. Finally, it's a disaster, as we are talking about AI, I only wanted to say three things. One is, the most important thing for me in AI is electricity. We will use such a lot of electricity in Europe and all around the world that we have to start a conversation how to get this electricity. Because if we do not increase our electricity production, we will enter a new fight of distribution of electricity between private consumers at home, industrial companies, and this new AI thing. And by the way, it will create an enormous price hike that will make electricity the most precious resource of our times. So when we talk about AI, we should start with the production of energy or electricity right now. By the way, I don't think that oil, as now in Venezuela or somewhere, will be the solution to this problem. We have to talk about, of course, nuclear energy and renewables. This is the only way forward in my understanding on that. Second thing, I like the military-industrial complex. I did not turn into a weapon fanatic, don't get me wrong. But what is the main thing of the military-industrial complex? It is the cooperation between private business and government that leads to the mobilization of enormous resources for research and development, and that created not only new weapons, but created a lot of other useful things. I think we need this type of a cooperation between government and business for the development of the green technologies that we need for the future. Third and last element is, in this context, regulation. It was already mentioned by the speaker before. If monopolies are going to dominate all this AI business, it will be a disaster. You have to destroy monopolies. I mean, if you like it or not. One cannot allow that the world is governed by some tech lords who at the same time want to destroy democracy. This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. And don't tell me that it doesn't work. We are coming from the old days where telecommunication has been everywhere a state monopoly. And now we have competition everywhere in the mobile telecommunication, etc., etc. So there is always a way to deregulate and to initiate competition into markets if you do not want to be the victim of the tech lords and the monopolies. Sorry for being so long.